Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 459th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the damsel made the answer, the philosopher continued, Tell me of Adam, and how was he first created? And she said, Allah created Adam of clay. The clay he made of foam, and the foam of the sea of darkness, darkness of light, light of a fish, the fish of a rock, the rock of a ruby, the ruby of water, and the water he created by his omnipotence, according to his saying, Exalted be his name. His commandment, when he willeth aught, is but to say, Be, and it is. What is meant by the poet in these verses? And eater, lacking mouth and even maw, yet trees and beasts to it are daily bread. Well fed it thrives, and shows a lively life, but give it water, and you do it dead. This, quoth she, is fire, and in these he asketh, two lovers, barred from every joy and bliss, who through the livelong night embracing lie. They guard the folk from all calamities, but with the rising sun apart they fly. She answered, The leaves of a door. Quoth he, Tell me the gates of Gehenna. Quoth she, There are 7 in number, and their names are comprised in these 2 couplets. Jehamnan, next Lazah, and third Hatim. Then count Sa'ir and Sakir, 5-fold. 6 cometh Jahim, and Hiwaya, the 7th. Here are 7 hells, and 4 lines briefly told. And quoth he, To what doth the poet refer when he saith, She wears a pair of ringlets long let down behind her as she comes and goes at speed, and I that never tastes of sleep, nor sheds a tear, or ne'er a drop it hath at need, that never all its life wore stitch of clothes, yet robes mankind in every mode of weed. Quoth she, A needle. What is the length and what is the breadth of the bridge of Al-Surat? Its length is 3,000 years' journey, 1,000 in descent, and 1,000 in ascent, and 1,000 level. It is sharper than a sword, and finer than a hair. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 460th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the damsel had described to him Al-Surat, the philosopher said, Inform me how many intercessions with Allah hath the Prophet for each soul. 3. What was Abu Bakr the first who embraced Al-Islam? Yes. Yet Allah became a Moslem before him. Allah came to the Prophet when he was a boy of 7 years old, for Allah vouchsafed him knowledge of the way of the salvation in his tender youth, so that he never prostrated himself to idols. Quoth he, Tell me what is more excellent, Ali or Abbas? Now, she knew that in propounding this question, Ibrahim was laying a trap for her, for if she said, Ali is more excellent than Abbas, she would lack excuse with the caliph for undervaluing his ancestor. So she bowed her head a while, now reddening, then paling, and lastly said, Thou askest me of 2 excellent men, each having his own excellence. Let us return to what we were about. When the caliph, Harun al-Rashid, heard her, he stood up and said, Thou hast spoken well by the Lord of Kaaba, O Tawaddud. Then quoth Ibrahim the rhetorician, What meaneth the poet when he saith, Slim-waisted one, whose taste is sweet as sweet, like us a lance whereon no head we scan, and all lieges find it work with will, eaten of afternoon in Ramazan. She answered, The sugar-cane. And he said, Tell me of many things. Asked she, What are they? And he said, What is sweeter than honey? What is sharper than the sword? What is swifter than poison? What is the delight of a moment, and what the contentment of 3 days? What is the pleasantest of days? What is the joy of a week? What is that debt that worst debtor denieth not? What is the prison of the tomb? What is the joy of the heart? What is the snare of the soul? What is death in life? What is the disease that may not be healed? What is the shame that may be wiped off? What is the beast that woneth not in cultivated fields, but lodgeth in waste places, and hateth the sons of Adam, and hath in him somewhat of the make of 7 strong and violent beasts? Quoth she, Hear what I shall say in reply. Then put off thy clothes, that I may explain to thee. And the Caliph said, Expound, and he shall doff his clothes. So she said, Now that which is sweeter than honey is the love of pious children to their 2 parents. That which is sharper than the sword is the tongue. That which is swifter than poison is the envier's eye. The delight of a moment is carnal copulation, and the contentment of 3 days in the debillatory for women. The pleasantest of days is that of profit on merchandise. The joy of a week is the bride. The debt, which is the worst debtor denieth not, is death. The prison of the tomb is a bad son. The joy of the heart is a woman's obedience to her husband. And it is said also that when flesh meat descendeth upon the heart, it rejoiceth therein. The snare of the soul is a disobedient slave. Death in life is poverty. The disease that may not be healed is an ill nature, and the shame that may not be wiped away is an ill daughter. Lastly, the beast that wanteth not in cultivated fields, but lodgeth in waste places, and hateth the sons of Adam, and hath in him somewhat of the make of 7 strong and violent beasts, is the locust, whose head is as the head of a horse, its neck as the neck of the bull, its wings as the wings of the vulture, its feet as the feet of the camel, its tail as the tail of the serpent, its belly as the belly of the scorpion, and its horns as the horns of the gazelle. The Caliph was astounded at her quickness and understanding, and said to the rhetorician, Doff thy clothes. So he rose and cried, I call all who are present in this assembly to witness that she is more learned than I and every other learned man. And he put off his clothes and gave them to her, saying, Take them, and may Allah not bless them to thee. So the Caliph ordered him fresh clothes and said, O Tawaddud, there is one thing left that thou didst engage, namely chess. And he sent for experts of chess and cards and tritac. The chess player sat down before her, and they set the pieces, and he moved and she moved, but every move he made she speedily countered. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 469th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the damsel was playing chess with the expert in the presence of the commander of the faithful, Harun al-Rashid, whatever move he made was speedily countered by her till she beat him, and found himself checkmated. Quoth he, I did but lead thee on, and thou mightest think thyself skilful, but set it up again, and thou shalt see. So they opened the pieces a second time, when he said in himself, Open thine eyes, or she will beat thee. And he fell to moving no piece save after calculation, and ceased not to play till she said, The king is dead. Chessmate. When he saw this, he was confounded at her quickness and understanding, but she laughed and said, Oh, professor, I will make a wager with thee on this 3rd game. I give thee the queen and the right-hand castle and the left-hand knight, and if thou beat me, take my clothes, and if I beat thee, I will take thy clothes. Replied he, I agree to this. And they replaced the pieces, she removing queen, castle, and knight. Then said she, Move, O master. So he moved, saying to himself, I cannot but beat her with such odds, and planned a combination. But behold, She moved on little by little, till she made one of her pawns a queen, and pushing up to him pawns and other pieces to take off his attention, set one in his way and tempted him to take it. Accordingly he took it, and she said to him, "The measure is meted, and the loads equally balanced. Eat till thou art overfull. Naught shall be thy ruin, O son of Adam, save thy greed. Knowest thou that I did but tempt thee, that I might finesse thee? See, this is checkmate." Adding, "So doff off thy clothes." Quoth he, "Leave me my bag trouser, so Allah repay thee." And he swore by Allah that he would contend with none so long as Tawaddud abode in the realm of Baghdad. Then he stripped off his clothes and gave them to her and went away. Thereupon came the backgammon game player and said to him, "If I beat thee this day, what wilt thou give me?" Quoth he, "I will give thee 10 suits of brocade of Constantinople, figured with gold, and 10 suits of velvet, and 1,000 gold pieces. And if I beat thee, I ask nothing but that thou write me an acknowledgment of my victory." Quoth she, "To it then, and do thy best." So they played, and he lost, and went away, chattering in Frankish jargon, and saying, "By the bounty of the Commander of the Faithful, there is naught like her in all the reigns of the world." Then the Caliph summoned players on instruments of music, and asked her, "Dost thou know aught of music?" When she answered, "Even so." He brought forth a worn lute, polished by use, whose owner, forlorn and lone, was by parting trodden down, and of which quoth one, describing it, "Allah watered a land, and upsprang a tree, struck root deep down, and raised head a sky. The birds oversang it when green its wood, and the fair o'ersing now the wood is dry." So they brought the lute in a bag of red satin with tassels of saffron-colored silk, and she opened the bag and took it out, and behold, it was graven. Oft hath a tender bough-made lute for maid, whose swift sweet lays at feast men's heart invade. She sings, it follows on her song, as though the bulbulbs taught her all the modes she played. She laid her lute in her lap, and with bosom inclining over it, bent to it with bending of a mother who suckleth her child. Then she preluded in 12 different modes, till the whole assembly was agitated with delight like a waving sea, and she sang the following: "Cut short this strangeness, leave unruth of you. My heart shall love, and you I by youth of you. Have ruth on one who sighs and weeps and moans, pining and yearning for the troth of you." The Caliph was ravished, and exclaimed, "Allah bless thee, and be merciful to him who taught thee." Whereupon she rose and kissed the ground before him. Then he sent for money, and paid her master, Abu Al-Husn, 100,000 gold pieces for her price. After which he said to her, "O Tawaddud, ask a boon of me." Replied she, "I ask of thee that thou restore me to my lord who sold me." "'Tis well," answered the Caliph, and restored her to her master, and gave her 5,000 dinars for herself. Moreover, he appointed Abu Al-Husn one of his companions for a permanence. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 462nd night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Caliph gave the damsel 5,000 dinars for herself, and restored her to her master, whom he appointed one of his companions for a permanence, and assigned him a monthly stipend of 1,000 dinars so long as he should live. And he abode with the damsel Tawaddud in all solace and delight of life. Marvel then, O king, at the eloquence of this damsel, and the hugeness of her learning and understanding, and her perfect excellence in all branches of art and science. And consider the generosity of the Commander of the Faithful, Harun al-Rashid, and that he gave her master this money, and said to her, 'Ask a boon of me.' And she besought him to restore her to her lord. So he restored her to him, and gave her 5,000 dinars for herself, and made him one of his boon companions. Where is such generosity to be found after the absent caliphs? May Allah Almighty have mercy upon them, one and all. And they tell a tale of the angel of death with the proud king and the devout man. It is related, O auspicious king, that one of the olden monarchs was once minded to ride out in state with the officers of his realm and the grandees of his retinue, and display to the folks of the marvels of his magnificence. So he ordered his lords and emirs, equipped them therefore, and commanded his keeper of a wardrobe to bring him of the richest of raiment, such as befitted the king in his state. And he bade them to bring his steeds of the finest breeds and pedigrees. Every man heeds. Which being done, he chose out of the raiment what rejoiced him most, and of the horses that which he deemed best. And donning the clothes together with the collars set with marguerites and rubies and all manner jewels, mounted and set forth in state, making his desultory prance and curvet among his troops, and glorifying in his pride and despotic power. And Iblis came to him, and laying his hands upon his nose, blew into his nostrils the breath of a hauteur and conceit, so that he magnified and glorified himself, and said in his heart, Who among men is like unto me? And he became so puffed up with his arrogance and self-sufficiency, and so taken up with the thought of his own splendor and magnificence, that he would not vouchsafe a glance to any man. Presently there stood before him one clad in tattered clothes, and saluted him, but he returned not his salam. Whereupon the stranger laid hold of his horse's bridle. Lift thy hand, cried the king. Thou knowest not whose bridle rein it is whereof thou hast taken hold. Quoth the other, I have a need of thee. Quoth the king, Wait till I alight, and then name thy need. Rejoined the stranger, It is a secret, and I will not tell it but in thine ear. So the king bowed his head to him, and he said, I am the angel of death, and I propose to take thy soul. Replied the king, Have patience with me a little, whilst I return to my house, and leave my people and children and neighbors and wife. By no means so, answered the angel. Thou shalt never return nor look on them again, for the fated term of thy life is past. So saying, he took the soul of the king, who fell off his horse's back dead, and departed thence. Presently the death angel met a devout man of whom Almighty Allah had accepted, and saluted him. He returned the salute, and the angel said to him, O pious man, I have a need of thee which must be kept secret. Tell it in my ear, quoth the devotee. And quoth the other, I am the angel of death. Replied the man, Welcome to thee, and praise be to Allah for thy coming. I am aweary of awaiting thine arrival, for indeed long hath been thine absence from the lover which longeth for thee. Said the angel, If thou have any business, make an end of it. But the other answered, saying, There is nothing so urgent to me as the meeting with my Lord, to whom be honor and glory. And the angel said, How wouldst thou fain have me take thy soul? I am bidden to take it as thou willest and choosest. He replied, Tarry till I make the wazoo oblation and prayer. When I prostrate myself, then take my soul, while my body is on the ground. Quoth the angel, Verily, my lord, be he extolled and exalted, commanded me not to take thy soul, but with thy consent, and as thou shouldest wish, so I will do thy will. Then the devout man made the minor oblation and prayed, and the angel of death took his soul in the act of prostration, and Almighty Allah transported it to the place of mercy and acceptance and forgiveness. And they tell another tale of the angel of death and the rich king. A certain king had heaped up coin beyond count, and gathered store of all precious things, which Allah the Most High hath created. So in order that he might take his pleasure whenas he should find leisure to enjoy all this abounding wealth he had collected, he built him a palace wide and lofty, such as besitteth and beseemeth kings, and set there 2 strong doors, and appointed for its services of its guards, servants, and soldiers, doorkeepers to watch and ward. One day He bade the cook dress him somewhat of the goodliest of food, and assembled his household and retainers, and boon companions and servants to eat with him, and partake of his bounty. Then he sat down upon the sofa of his kingship and dominion, and propping his elbow upon the cushion, addressed himself, saying, O soul, thou hast gathered together all the wealth of the world. So now take thy leisure therein, and eat of this good at thine ease, in long life and prosperity ever rife. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And now, when it was the 463rd night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that hardly had the king made an end of saying to himself, Eat of this weal at thine ease, in long life and prosperity ever rife, when a man, clad in tattered raiment, with an asker's wallet hanging at his neck, as he were one who came to beg food, knocked with the door ring, a knock so loud and terrible that the whole palace shook as with the quake of earth, and the king's throne trembled. The servants were affrighted, and rushed to the door, and when they saw the man who had knocked, they cried out to him, saying, Woe to thee! What manner of unmannerly fashion be this? Wait till the king eateth, and we will then give thee of what is left. Quoth he, Tell your lord to come out and speak with me, for I have of him a pressing need and a matter to heed. They cried, Away, fool! Who art thou that we should bid our lord come forth to thee? But he said, Tell him of this. So he went in and told the king, who said, Did ye not rebuke him, and draw upon him, and threaten him? Now as he spoke, behold, there came another knock at the gate, louder than the first knock, whereupon the servants sprang at the stranger with staves and weapons to fall upon him and slay him. But he shouted at them, saying, Bide in your steads, for I am the angel of death. Hereat their hearts quaked, and their wits forsook them. Their understandings were in confusion, their side muscles quivered in perturbation, and their limbs lost the power of motion. Then said the king to them, Tell him to take a substitute in my place, and one to relieve me in this case. But the angels answered, saying, I will take no substitute, and I come not but on thine account to cause separation between thee and the goods thou hast gathered together, and the riches thou hast heaped upon the entreatment. When the king heard this, he wept, and he groaned, saying, Allah, curse the treasure which hath deluded and undone me, and diverted me from the service of my lord. I deemed it would profit me, but today it is a regret for me, and a calamity to me, and behold, I go forth empty-handed of it, and leave it to my foes. Thereupon Allah cursed the treasure to speak out, and it said, Wherefore cursest thou me? Curse thyself, for Allah created both me and eke thyself of the dust, and appointed me to be in thine hand, that thou mightest provide thee with me a victim for the next world, and give alms with me to the poor and the needy and the sick, and build mosques and hospices and bridges and aqueducts, so might I be an aidance unto thee in the world to come. But thou didst garner me and hoard me up, and on thine own vanities bestowest me. Neither gavest thou thanks for me, as was due, but wast ungrateful to me. And now thou must leave me to thy foes, and thou hast naught save thy regretting and thy repenting. But what is my sin, but that thou shouldest revile me? Then the angel of death took the king's soul as he sat on the throne, before he ate of the food, and he fell down dead. Quoth Ali Almighty, While they were rejoicing for that which had been given them, we suddenly laid hold on them, and behold, they were seized with despair. And they tell another tale of the angel of death and the king of the children of Israel. There was a puissant despot among the kings of the Banu Israeli, who sat one day upon the throne of his kingship, when he saw come to him by the gate of the hall a man of forbidding aspect and horrible presence. The king was affrighted at his sudden intrusion, and his look terrified him. So he sprang up before him and said, Who art thou, O man? Who gave thee leave to come into me, and who invited thee to enter my house? Quoth the stranger, Verily, the Lord of the house sent me to thee, nor can any doorkeeper exclude me, nor need I leave to come into the king's, for I reck not of a sultan's majesty, neither of the multitude of his guards. I am he who from whom no tyrant is at rest, nor can any man escape from my grasp. I am the destroyer of delights, and the sunderer of societies. Now when the king heard this, a palsy crept over him, and he fell on his face in a swoon. But presently coming to himself, he asked, Art thou the angel of death? And the stranger answered, Yes. I conjure thee by Allah, quoth the king, grant me one single day's respite, that I may pray pardon of my sins, and ask absolution of my Lord, and restore to their rightful owners the money which are in my treasuries, so I may not be burdened with the woe of a reckoning, nor with the misery of punishment therefore. Replied the angel, Well away, this may be in no way. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my tales for the day, till it be morrow.